Okay, so we're going to start the series, this video series on Makahiki. I'm here with George. Hi,
Hello.
George. And we're not that organized, but we're hoping it's going to be helpful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So the stuff we'd like to talk about at various points include all of these things. I installed it yesterday. There was an issue with
The Python imaging library. Early
which
on.
we fixed, but then there's the Selenium stuff.
Right, there was a missing requirement. I had it commented out because I didn't think we would use it, but I just
Have you put it back in now?
uncommented. Yeah.
Okay.
Uncommented it,
Okay. So maybe what we should start by doing is just quickly go to the Makahiki GitHub site,
Mm-hmm.
which I think I have in here somewhere. And let me go to the README. Okay, so you need Python 2.6.
Mm-hmm.
You need the Xcode Apple developer tools.
Right, and maybe I thought about switching the order of these two because in OS 10, I'm not sure if you have Python by default or if you, after the developer tools, you'll have Python by default. It's one or the other. I'm not really sure.
Maybe we should put that Xcode stuff first.
Yeah, just to make sure.
And then we have this Python imaging library, which is a total hassle, but if you use Homebrew, it's not. These are all, I know that people have had a lot of problems with Windows.
So,
they're just going to have those problems?
I mean, they usually, like, for Windows users, there's usually some pre-compiled binaries you can install. So in some ways, it could be a little bit easier, but I haven't tried it out lately.
We don't really know. I know that one student last semester took quite a while, right, to try to get it.
Right.
So anyway, we hope that it'll work for you if you're on Windows, or alternatively install Linux or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go through this whole GitHub thing to get an account on GitHub, install Git, install pip, and then you say optional but recommended virtual env wrapper, but I assume everybody should just do that.
Pretty much. I mean, if you don't want like all of the requirements and stuff, and there are like a lot of like libraries that Makahiki uses. If you don't want all of that being like dumped into your like global Python path, like maybe in the future you work on something else that has like a different set of requirements, then it is probably a good idea to use the virtual env wrapper.
Yeah, I mean, I'd almost say you should just use it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't really be optional, because in fact yesterday when we had that problem with PIL, we were able to back out very easily using this, whereas God knows what would have been involved otherwise. So I think you should do that, and then we should then you download the source with Git. Oh, and then you create this account at GitHub. George needs to make you a collaborator at the GitHub site so you can get the code to in a modifiable format.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go in this Makahiki directory. And what I understand now is that this was kind of based upon the desire to use Heroku and other services.
Right. There were two past services, two of them being like Heroku and Gondor, who both wanted a specific setup, like folder structure for their applications. And once you follow their rules, it's really nice because they can do things like it can automatically it knows to look for files in certain places and will automatically run them for you.
Okay. So anyway, that's why that directory looks a little weird.
Right.
At least in terms of its name. And then you create the virtual environment. You do pip install -r requirements. That loads all the dependencies. There's quite a bit. It takes about 5 minutes or so to do that. And then you have to update this Makahiki Settings.py.
Right.
Although I did not update that, I think, yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, for our uses, because it's basically like the one that's in version control is like basically our UH settings, so we don't change it, but that line is in there if you are like, at another university or something and
right.
you can change certain things.
Okay. And then I did copy example settings, local settings.py.dev to local settings.py. Mm-hmm. So this is in the Makahiki directory. Right. I think that isn't clear here, but
right.
It turns out that that's kind of the Makahiki is the top level.
Yeah.
Kind of the you think right. of it logically speaking as your top level area for doing stuff. Is that true?
Mm-hmm,
okay. And then we create a database using this, and we go through some junk to make it all set up correctly. And we loaded some sample data, and then we ran the server, and in fact it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty good. And then there's this Facebook stuff, and then there's this troubleshooting stuff, which I didn't run into yesterday.
Right.
But maybe other people will. And then we did run these tests, which didn't totally succeed for me yesterday. We fixed one of the problems yesterday with this PIL library, and then George says he's fixed the other one. So
mm-hmm.
theoretically, you should run these tests, and they should all pass.
Yep.
If that doesn't happen for you, then let us know, because that's an unintended situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so there we have it. Okay, so that's what I did yesterday, and I guess let's just for grins, I will go to Makahiki, and then if I wanted to bring up the server, now that it's all installed, I would say what?
You do a Python manage.py run server.
Okay, so that's what I would run.
Oh, sorry. The first thing you should always do.
Work on, right?
You need to do the work on. You need to activate your virtual environment.
Okay, so now I'm working on Makahiki.
Yep.
And I'll do Python. And it should all be working, so we'll go here. Mm-hmm. See, this is what's so great. Wouldn't we all love to do development by having the actual developer sitting by us as we do things, who can see problems that occur and instantly tell us what we did wrong? That's just beautiful. So there we go. So we have the Makahiki system up, and let's say that I wanted to log in. What would I do, actually? Would I try to log in through I live in Halealoha, or do I use the the admin interface, or?
You can just log in as if you're in Halealoha.
No kidding.
Work.
And it does.
Yeah.
Now, why is that? Why am I a user? Am I just part of the test data for this?
Yeah,
I don't understand why it worked. Why did it work?
But you did also, you might have been part of the test data, but it was also the case that when you, part of the setup, we asked you to create a super user,
right.
And your username has to be, like if you're going to go through the CAS authentication, your username has to be the one.
Right, which I did. Johnson@hawaii.edu was the one.
So basically the way the CAS thing works is just matches up that username with it.
But I have been placed on a lounge, Lehua Lounge A, so definitely I had to be in the test data to make this work. So that you probably won't be able to have this happen if you're kind of a random person installing this, but
well, they'll be able to log in. They should get something, but yeah, they probably won't be put in the lounge right away.
Right. So this is kind of what it looks like, and you can click through, the various screens. So that's pretty good. And look at all these photos that don't work. Or is why is that happening there?
It's probably because when we dumped the data, the images aren't stored in the database, right? So they're stored in a file system, and we didn't copy the images over when we dumped the data as well. So it probably should just be blank images all around. I don't know, or.
Well, let me ask you, this brings up an issue which we really should be noting someplace. But for Makahiki 2, don't we want everything to be stored in the database, including images?
So there was that. So that probably would also solve the problem.
Yeah.
By default.
So let's.
Then again, like, I mean, the issue then is like I don't know, like it could be like, putting all that stuff inside of a repository, like putting like test images and stuff inside of like sample data in a database. It could be relatively big. I don't know if we want to do that or not.
Why would it be bigger in the database than on the file system?
Well, I mean, we didn't put the images in the file system anyway, but like I'm just saying, like, if we were to like dump the data in the database and all the images are there, like downloading the source would take that much longer because now there's this additional data that you need to have. But maybe it's not that big of an issue.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess given that, I mean, we forgot to do it here.
Right.
I'm thinking that logically speaking, there's nothing really that different about a picture and other things. So, and it's just one less thing to know about, I guess, in the future. True. So anyway,
broken images inside the screen anyway.
Yeah, so we should definitely remember in Makahiki too.
So the same thing goes for the prizes.
Right. Maybe I'm just gonna make a little list of things that we should think about for Makahiki 2. That is pictures in database. At least to consider. Okay. So what should we do next?
I don't know. I mean,
should we peruse the
I guess
file system, maybe?
I don't think there's anything.
It's too bad we can't ask our users what they would like to see next, but all our audience. Okay, so maybe the next thing to do is we'll just go through at a high level what the Makahiki file system looks like, which I've never really seen either. So we have this init.py and init.pyc. What are those?
So Python, for a folder to be identified as like a Python package, it needs a certain like header file, which is this like double underscore init.py.
Okay. So that's what's in there.
Oh, it's just there's some comments in there. I usually probably would have left it blank. Like most of them are going to end up being blank.
Okay. So we don't really care.
Yeah, this is probably carried over from like the older system.
Okay. So any of these other things of interest? Requirements.txt. Might as well look at that.
Right.
Okay. So tell us about this.
So these are just like all of the requirements. Basically, I ran a pip command to like dump the things I had installed into a file. A lot of these requirements are also like carried over from the old. We were using the Pinax project, so there are additional like links to for like repository URLs at the top. So yeah, there are a lot, and we were talking the other day that we probably don't need some of them, but a lot of it was just because Pinax had installed like all of these things that it's just kind of carried over.
Makahiki 2 is definitely not going to use Pinax.
Right, and the current implementation does not use the Pinax setup at all.
Okay, so get rid of any dependencies that were Pinax related. Makahiki 2. Okay, well that's certainly interesting. Let me just get rid of that. Okay. Okay, then we have this readme.md. That's just the that's just from the Git.
The markdown file.
The markdown file for Git. Okay. And then we have this log directory. Tell us about that. Logs go here.
So by default, all the logs will, like when the servers run. Well, this is in part because I was messing around with Heroku and I needed a place to put the logs. So this is where it ends. Like the settings end up going in there. It's about it. I don't.
So I'm not seeing any.
Yeah.
These files have
They're
0.
empty.
They're empty. So.
Yeah, it might be a setting that I have to go investigate and make sure, because it used to be the case that the log files were stored in a different place, like one folder up from the manage.py.
Huh. Let's see. Our thing is still working here.
Right.
But these are not the log. This is not being stored in a file. All of
No.
these things. This is just command line
Right.
junk.
That's just the server responses.
Oh, just noticing that the kind of in a cool way, when you get a 404, it gives it a different. It highlights in a different color. Wow,
Colors.
terminal colors. Okay, so why would that have gotten a 404? Any idea?
Not sure. Yeah, I'll have to take a look.
So
It's also the case that we don't even use front-end admin all that much anymore, so it's probably another thing that we probably just remove.
yeah, so there's a lot of CSS. So this is basically site media is apparently some subdirectory. I don't know where. We'll find out, right?
Right. Like somewhere in the settings, it like resolves like the site media to be a certain directory.
Yeah.
And one of the things about Django is that there's this concept of different apps. I think that we'll get around to eventually. But some of these different apps might also have their own CSS files, and so there is a way to like collect all of these CSS files in one location, and sometimes, yeah, this one I'm not really sure why it's not working, so I have to take a look.
I wonder if it's even there. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not even in the system anymore.
Right.
Should we check? Just for fun?
Sure.
Okay, so how would I get to that directory? From Makahiki. Where do I go next? Makahiki, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Let's see.
do I go to
Media.
media?
It's either media or site media. CSS.
You think it's here?
I don't actually.
You think it's site media? Is there a site media? Oh, site_media. Media.
No, it's not in there.
Media. CSS.
We're using default.
Let's go back and see what the.
Yeah, so we see.
We need some static. We need site_media static, right?
Right, but that URL is mapped to a certain location, so it doesn't directly match up. Like the CSS/default is the folder you're looking at right now. So it is highly likely that it's not in the source directory. Like, it's not located right there. It's probably located in the front end admin app that is installed as a requirement. So it's probably hiding like.
Okay.
Somewhere else.
Okay. Well, I won't spend any.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all, since it's all new to me. I'm curious about. So we fail to get this.
Right.
We do some crazy other get stuff.
Requirements.
I'm kind of feeling like. And then we try to get. Okay, so this is probably that directory you're talking about, where we're storing these JPEGs that are not.
Right.
Okay, and we'll probably have a few failures related to that, which we can see. Okay.
Doing a bunch of 304s.
304 means what?
It's not changed. So.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting. All right, so continuing. So we'll go back up to Makahiki. So this log directory is theoretically where things should eventually be when we're hosting with Heroku or whatever.
Right.
But it's not right now, probably because there's some
setting that we just have to change.
Okay. So let's go into Makahiki. And
right, the Makahiki log is actually in here. and it's probably properly ignored by Git.
Okay, so how do you see the log in here?
Yeah, it's right there. The log.
Why can't I? The log?
Makahiki.log.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Let's just take a look at that. Just because I'm interested.
Wow, it's all 1 of 5.
This is from yesterday.
Oh, it's because all the tests
Right.
also dump stuff inside
Right.
here. So
let's go back
that's
up
kind of what you see.
to 106. This is where 106 starts right here.
Yeah.
So, well, that's much more useful from a kind of user tracking perspective. So we just see which pages I went to. Okay, that's kind of cool. Okay, so here we are back in the Makahiki development directory, and maybe it might be useful, I don't know, but if I do a star.py, we can start by just looking at all the Python files in this top level directory. So, what should we look at here?
Well, first I'll talk about what we don't really need to look at, and that's the manage.py file. It's kind of like boilerplate, like Django startup information. So, and that's all that's in there. And in general, you don't modify this. It's just setting up the environment, putting the apps folder on the path and stuff like that. So.
Okay, and that's a Django. It's a Django kind of thing.
More or less, yeah.
Django boilerplate. Okay. What's next?
Oh, probably. There's the main settings.py file, so settings.py.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I was looking for. Okay. And
so there's a bunch of stuff. I commented out a lot of Pinax references, but this is the first, like, as part of like manage.py, it loads up this settings file first. So there's a lot of settings that hopefully we don't have to change too much.
I'm like irritated that. No kidding. Look at that.
There's no syntax highlighting.
Yeah, it's. Huh. Something's busted. Okay. Anyway. Okay. So. Settings. Okay. So we've got. Import these paths. Project root. Which is just right here. Yeah.
Basically
okay.
Location.
Default theme. Now Pinax. So now I'm seeing Pinax.
Right.
But we don't want Pinax.
Yeah, so we should probably just start deleting all of this stuff.
Okay, so in Makahiki 2.txt,
do some settings cleaning.
Settings.py cleanup.
Yeah.
Okay, debug true, template debug equals debugged, databases. Okay, so when would we want to actually, what kinds of things would we, why would anyone want to go in here?
So if you are a developer in particular, probably the most interesting stuff is, if you scroll a little bit more down, there's a setting called installed apps.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so whenever, like, if you're going to create new modules and stuff, like, you'll have to add your new module to this, whether it's like in the components folder or further down, there's the pages folder as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, in particular, this would be interesting for developers because if something is added, it needs to go in here. And if you find some like third-party like library that you use.
Okay.
You also might have to list that in here too.
Okay, so really, this is the installed apps is where most of the standard kinds of things that you want to change about the system, you'd have to talk about that here. Okay, then fixture dirs, that's probably not a big deal.
Right. Some Pinax stuff. So at the bottom, there's the log file location.
Right.
So down here is where it starts loading up the Makahiki settings, competition settings, and local settings. as well. So it doesn't. So local settings in particular, you can override like the settings inside of here if you choose to. And this also means that whenever you need like Makahiki settings or competition settings, in general, you can use the same settings object that is used by Django in particular.
Okay. Okay, then logging.
Yes, a lot of like logging setup. I still don't even fully understand it. It took me a while to figure out that this is the way the logging needs to be set up.
Okay, and this is this what gets the logging format that I saw in the makahiki.log?
Right. This is how you configure it. Like you configure a handler to do that.
Okay.
So I think like a little further down, there's loggers. There's a Makahiki logger.
That's the guy there. Yeah. Okay. All right. That looks pretty straightforward.
Right.
Okay, so so we've looked at manage.py, we've looked at settings.py.
Right.
What should we look at next?
I guess we can briefly look at Makahiki Settings.py.
Okay.
Not a whole lot going on other than time zone, just the CAS, the Central Authentication Service, some settings there. There's some settings for like labels that are used for like the competition. So if somebody else wants a competition called the Energy Challenge, you can just change that. There's the lounge specifier, so the group name is a lounge instead of a floor.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some old theme settings. I guess I should just delete those because we had this idea of themes.
Oh, right.
We got rid of them, so.
Okay, so theme. This is in makahiki.py. Settings? _settings?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so theme selector vestigial. Okay. I'm just also wondering about I guess in Makahiki 2, my thought is that these are kind of like global variables.
Mm-hmm.
And my sense was that in Makahiki 2, we'd have more of classes and instances, and that somehow these feel to me more like properties of
the entire
some kind of instance thing, rather than basically having an environment variable or a property value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, definitely things like floor, like a lot of things use the floor name, I guess, and templates. So
I guess what I'm saying is it almost seems to me like there's like a dictionary associated with an instance, like. Anyway, just something that there's something about this like smells to me like, and it was fine for Makahiki 1 actually. This made sense for Makahiki, but in the context of Makahiki 2, I'm questioning whether this is the right way to go. Now these themes, oh my goodness, look at that. Yeah, so this is definitely old stuff that needs to be done differently. In Makahiki 2. We need some way to... This is just crazy. Do we actually use this code?
We did for a little while, but I don't think...
Maybe this code is just vestigial.
Yeah.
I bet you it's not even used anymore.
I don't think
so. We don't really know. We're just talking. Okay, so setup wizard activity name.
Yes, so I wanted to avoid hard coding the intro video activity to the first login wizard as much as possible. So when you do that, part of the process is it looks in here to find what the name of what the activity is in the database. So it looks up for a name. It looks it up by name instead of like ID or something.
Oh, okay.
Because those can be like those can be different.
So I think in Makahiki 2 we need some kind of object which is the setup wizard.
Right.
And that guy gets configured. You know, he or she or it knows about where to look for this kind of stuff, as opposed to kind of a global variable. Now, energy 30 days URL. This is because you guys needed access to energy data.
Right, in the spreadsheets.
Right. Yes. Well, this is a whole other ball of... I guess there's going to be some kind of object in Makahiki 2 which serves as kind of a facade to Watt Depot, or to the whatever the underlying energy management system is, because it's not clear. In fact, I guess one of the things that we've talked about for Makahiki 2 is getting rid of Google Spreadsheets and essentially folding that into Python, into the Makahiki side of things, and go build these cached things. You know. Right.
We are using memcached on the production server, so there's a lot of we could store a lot of information inside of there instead of
and then it would decay. Elsewhere. We could just set the
or we could cache it in the database as well, just to be safe, because if the system goes down, then all the data is lost, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, so that's an interesting part of the process as well. Okay, so just so we don't forget any of these, so we got the theme selector visual object for setup wizard facade to energy backend instead of Google Spreadsheets, or at least to hide that. We may continue to have these Google Spreadsheets, who knows, but somehow we need to get it out of this kind of global variable mode. It doesn't feel, what can I say? It doesn't feel modular.
Right, properly encapsulated.
It's just, properly encapsulated. That's exactly the software engineering buzzword I was looking for. Okay. Okay, so there we go there. Oops, I'm in the wrong, I want to be at this thing. Okay, so that's Makahiki Settings.
Okay, and I guess the last settings to look in is competition settings.
Okay.
And this is just pretty straightforward. Like, these are just dates. Usually you would put in like a hard-coded string, year, month, day, but for development settings, I've made it dynamic in a sense, so that it's just dependent on when the server started, more or less.
Good.
So the competition always started 3 days ago, and it's going to end in 6 days, and then there's a round, so you're in the last day of, or round 2 just started, I think, in this case. Or not round 2, but I guess you just finished round 1.
Oh, you've just finished round 1. So, So this competition round. So I understand competition start, competition end. What I don't quite get is competition rounds appears to specify that there's only one round.
Right.
But is that true? Or does the current code kind of hardwire, in a sense, the idea that there are 3 rounds?
Well, these, the production settings have a different competition settings. It actually specifies 2 rounds in the competition, but the overall is just separate. There's an overall, if you're not in a round, then you're in the overall competition.
Oh, I see. So this is very interesting. So this specifies the overall round,
right?
And then we can also have this idea of kind of internal rounds,
right?
And that's what's being specified here.
Right,
I see.
Right.
So I'm outside of round 1, and so I'm starting the.
So you're in the overall competition.
What do you think about that for Makahiki 2?
I don't know. I mean, I thought it made sense just because we were thinking in this like overall mindset to like before that I thought it would be more straightforward to just have like the overall just be like the last leg of the competition, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. Just I'll say it before. I've said it before. I've said it again. I think that this is almost always exactly the best way to have done Makahiki 1. Mm-hmm. So I'm not actually, But in the
Makahiki 2 sense.
But in the Makahiki, kind of what I'm questioning here is, now that we're going on to a more generalized framework,
right?
Is it the case that we want to retain our original concept of overall and sub-rounds, which this specification format kind of locks us into?
Right.
I guess we could talk to users. Hate to do that, but
if it wasn't for users.
If it wasn't for users, it'd be so easy. Okay, so at any rate, here's some code that is structured in a way that directly ties us to that kind of model of how the competition is structured. So I think that's something we've got to think about, whether we want to hardwire that again into the next version of the system.
Right.
And again, I think this has to be encapsulated, into something.
Right. There needs to be, I can imagine there being some sort of like round manager. I think that this needs to be encapsulated in, because a lot of the different components need this information, and it's probably better if there's some kind of manager that they can talk to and say, hey, we're in round 1.
Right. Right. That's kind of what I would think. Okay, so that was competition settings. What should I look at next?
Some of these others were just analyses that we created, like the raffle analysis, and the time spent were just analysis scripts that we came up with.
Well, let's just look at them briefly. So raffle analysis is, we're going to import pin X.
Yeah, this is like old boilerplate.
Okay.
Code. It was borrowed from, what's it called? Yeah, it was borrowed from the old, like the manage.py, the way it used to be. Because like one of the problems with Django is that if you want to create like a one-off script, you need to have, like, it needs to set up its Django environment for you. Yeah. So basically that's why like a lot of times we ended up copying this. There's actually a way to add commands to manage.py, which I sometimes use as well, but even that's like a lot of like boilerplate code to use. So
okay, so what you're basically saying here is that the raffle analysis .py, etc. Contain old PinX boilerplate to be removed. Okay. And okay, so so there's junk in there that we don't care about. I'm just trying to scroll through the junk until we presumably get to around here. Okay. So actually, we're seeing some Python code.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen some Python code. So let's just, for the sake of those of us who are new to Python, why don't you just walk us through this function step by step. So we have this function called raffle allocation, takes no arguments. Right. It assigns.
We're opening a file called raffle allocation CSV. We're going to write to it. So this assumes that we loaded all of the log files into the database, which I think Youngwen did before. So it's going to load. So this is actually your first Django database query that's running. Okay. What it does is it looks in the Makahiki log model. It's going to select and filter only for URLs that start with /prizes/raffle.
Okay, so that's what. So this first one, we're just going to open the file that we're going to write our results to. Second one is we're creating this logs object. And Makahiki.log is a class that encapsulates access to...
Right, it's the model that...
Model, okay, good.
So yeah, so there's like... So the logs object is like a query that contains all of like the logs that, you know, have URLs that start with prizes.
Okay, and then we want to filter by
right.
this URL starts with prizes raffle. Okay, and then hours is empty, and then for log in logs.
Right, so we parse the timestamp that the log is associated with.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
so
that makes sense. And then we find out the date.
Right.
And then we find
the hours related to that date. So how many hours were spent? This method is hours being that curly braces is a dictionary.
Right.
So the hours.get, and it's going to get like for that date. So that date string, and if it doesn't exist, it will just be an empty.
Okay. Okay. And it's going to put that in the date.
Yep.
Okay. Location, or key, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're gonna find for that date
an hour,
and we'll get that.
Yep.
And then if we see if it ends with add ticket, then we create a third level to this thing, which is the add with the key of add, and we're going to increment it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That's so nice, because I'm just thinking about how this looks in Java.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a little bit nicer here. By about 3x lines of code.
Right.
All right.
I mean, I'm looking at it, it is a little long, but at the same time, does what it's...
No, it's not bad. I don't think it's that long.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't want it any more compressed.
Right.
I'd say, because otherwise it would start to get harder to read.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, if it's remove tickets, so we're only concerned with adding tickets and removing tickets for raffle allocation function. And
so we're looking at the times that people add and remove tickets.
Right. So we're just counting up. We're creating this kind of history. I don't know what it is. It's a data structure that allows us to see for each day and each hour how many times they added or subtracted a ticket.
Yep.
Okay. And then so that's what we do is we go through the logs, and then for date, contents, and hours.iter items.
Right. So after we've like got all of the information,
so generated our data structure.
Yeah, we write it all out.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Looks good. I like it. Okay. And then Ralph. Then all this other stuff is just going to be. I mean, it's going to be something similar. We don't have to go through everyone.
Although I guess the interesting thing, if you're new to Python, is at the very bottom is that if double underscore name.
Yeah.
Equals main, so that's just checking if this is like run from the command line and stuff.
Nice.
If it is, then we'll run that session.
Yeah. So this is like kind of, you know, the Python equivalent of the main method in Java. Okay. And so you used to do the raffle allocation, now you're just doing raffle users.
Yeah. Okay. I guess. You know, sometimes these analyses take a while, so I comment.
Yeah. No, that's fine. It's totally fine. Okay. Excellent. I just saw some Python code. It makes me so happy. It was 1996 when so it's been 15 years. Jesus.
What was it, Python? Was it Python 1?
I don't know. I don't know what it was. It was a long time ago. But I'm happy to get back to it. All right. So long ago that my Emacs does not even fontify the stupid code when I... Okay, so that was raffle analysis. Let's look at the other analysis, just so we looked
time
at
spent
it.
Would be the other one.
Okay. So we got all this boilerplate again, which
so
will get fixed.
This one's somewhat more complicated because there's a lot of analyses that we're doing. So,
okay.
I just have like some CSV like header lines at the top.
Okay.
To write out.
So calculate days spent. So we open a CSV file. We do the same thing to filter the logs object. Now this is the user object, not the logs object.
So we're only looking for users who have their profile, their points are greater than 0.
Right.
And we're making sure that they're in a floor.
Oh, that's good.
Not admins. And then we order them by points descending. That's the minus there.
Okay.
And then by ID.
Nice. Okay.
Right. And then the start date and end date is hardwired in because we're only looking at a certain range.
Right. Right. So this is what we did for. Okay. So this brings up kind of an interesting task. Just noticing that this was hardwired,
right.
Which is that for Makahiki 2, I don't know if this is Makahiki 2 or Makahiki 2.5 even, but you know, at some point along the road, not in the near future, you know, we should think about making these scripts, figuring out how you want to make analyses more generic,
right,
and you know, more accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be kind of neat to have this stuff available almost in real time, just like as part of the admin, which we could, you know. Now that it's
if it just like generated reports and
right.
Django can even send emails to admins. If
Right. So, okay, so there's all these cool things. We're calculating the user's time spent in the various pages. Yeah. Lounge. You know, and so this is where it actually is going to get a little more complicated in Makahiki 2, because in Makahiki 2 it's not clear that we're going to have those 6 top level pages.
Right.
So to do these analyses in a flexible way, we almost need a data structure that tells us, you know, what are the pages, you know, blah blah blah, that this particular instance of a competition has. And instead of lounges, we'll have some more generic.
Right.
It'll probably be floor.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, totally perfect for what we were doing.
You know, for writing a script that we needed information for
like 3 hours later. Yeah. Okay, so that's that analysis. Time spent. Any other ones?
Those are the 2 analyses.
Okay. So what's left here?
So there are 2 periodic scripts. There's a check energy goal.
Okay, let's look at that one. So these
again, boilerplate, because it's being run from. Now it's not being run from like a user, but it's being run by the server, like periodically using launchd or whatever.
Right. So where are we now? We're in Makahiki?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this bunch of Python files at the top level of Makahiki, some of which are periodic scripts.
So we should probably move. Well, I guess
and some of which are analysis scripts.
Yeah.
So we might want to think about. So let's see, the Makahiki top level contains scripts, some of which are analysis, some of which are periodic in competition scripts. Okay. So anyway, let's see what this guy does. So we got all our boilerplate junk.
Right.
And then we import a bunch of junk.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get a few
settings, because we're going to look at the spreadsheets, so we need GData access.
Oh, okay. What is this? Check energy goal.
Yep.
Okay, so this runs how often? Once an hour?
Oh, this one is to award the points in the energy goal game. So it's
once a
day.
day.
Roughly, I think we set it to like 11:55 just to be safe.
Okay. Okay, and so it's basically going to check and see.
Right, it's using the GData API. It's going to look at the cells and the contents in each of the rows.
Oh, so is there a Python GData interface?
I believe so. Yeah, import GData at the top. Ray Youngwed wrote this and then looked at it. So yeah.
Okay.
And then there's like the award point method. So
okay.
Points.
Okay. How is this tested?
It is not.
It is not tested.
At least not the actual lookup to the spreadsheet. I mean, just making sure, like, when you ask for award points, that I think.
Yeah.
When the goal is saved, like there's a test to make sure that the points are awarded to everybody when the goal is saved.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So there's that check energy goal, and then the other periodic one was.
Sorry, I think it's
Time
process
spent?
notices.
Oh, process notices. Now, what does this do?
Stuff. And so this we're looking at. We wanted to put alerts for like when each of the rounds started.
Uh huh.
So that's the first one. So we're just checking if we're in a round or not.
Okay. Commitment end.
Yeah, we want to make.
Okay.
And give people notices when commitments end.
Okay. So this is clearly a case where the factorization or the modularization is by do all the notifications in this file,
Right.
as opposed to we have some kind of component like a RSVP or a commitment or whatever, and
Yeah, it is not delegated to the individual.
Yeah, which
components.
which I think is, see, I guess the issue is in Makahiki 2, we want the ability to kind of take out something and then all of this code gets deactivated. Whereas my feeling is the problem with this approach is that what happens when you don't have commitments or RSVPs or I mean, I guess in this case it's probably not as, I mean, it could work in that if you don't have any RSVPs, it just, the code runs, it doesn't do anything. But I think it's something we want to worry about.
Right.
So this was called, what was this called?
Process notices.
Yeah, process notices might need remodularization. I don't think these notes are going to make any sense unless you're actually watching the screencast. That's my thought. Wait. Yeah. Wait, what did I do that for? Okay. Okay, so that's process notices.
Okay. And the last one, which is, I think we have one more .py file, and this is actually important to Django and something that developers should know.
Okay.
Is the URLs.py.
Oh, good. I was wondering about that.
This is very important.
Okay, so we got a small amount of boilerplate, but I see the Pinax word.
I commented it out.
Oh, it's commented out. Yeah. Now, if I had phonic colorizing, I would have. Yeah. So, the next screencast, I'm going to have a better editor for this. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so tell us about this.
So this is just like the top level URL mapping file. There's some that map directly to view method. Like the first one is pages.landing. So the first argument to that URL thing is the regular expression. So this is matching to empty. Like there's nothing coming afterwards.
This first guy.
Yep. So there's nothing in there. It begins and ends with nothing.
Yeah.
So that's going to take you to pages.landing. That there's a method in the pages.landing component or views called index.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what it is. And we could also just refer to it. You can give it a name so that you can refer to it if you need to like redirect or whatever.
I see.
So you can just name it. Like
so somewhere else we'll see root index in this file.
Right.
That's okay.
Right. And so the next one is just the landing page. So /landing will take you to the landing page directly.
Okay. Restricted.
So this is the one. This is what happens when you like are a UH person, but you're not allowed to log in.
Oh.
For someone else, so you're redirected to restricted.
Okay.
And so there's nothing special about it really. There's no like dynamic content in it. So we just direct to template instead of actually using a method. So we just render that landing/restricted.html template instead of going through a method.
So that's what that direct to template thing means.
Yeah.
Okay.
So about's the same. There's no like dynamically generated content. There's a browser check that we check we check for IE more or less.
Okay.
Coming soon. Okay, and I guess the other unique one is so there's the rest of the pages like Canopy, Home, Activities, Energy, Help. So instead of like, specifying the individual, like, okay, so if you're in like activities / whatever, instead of putting that all in here, the pages have a separate URL component.
Right. Okay.
So we're including those instead of putting.
So they presumably inside this object there's some kind of regular expression set of things themselves.
Thing
okay.
That assumes that it already starts with canopies. So
yeah.
Just whatever's left.
Cool. Okay. All right. So this all looks good. Let's think about any Makahiki 2 issues. It almost seems like this object has to be built more dynamically.
Sure.
As a part of, when you kind of configure your system and you say, I'm going to have this and this and this and this, right? Part of it is like, part of that configuration is each component is going to contribute the stuff it wants, which is going to be, unfortunately, like this is, you can look at this file and see what the heck's going on, and it's going to be distributed all over the place and more prone to failure.
Right.
In Makahiki 2, but that's the price of a more dynamic, modular framework. We may have to print this sucker out on startup or something so that you can actually see, what the heck is going on. Okay.
Oh, and old Pinax stuff that needs to be removed.
So what's the Pinax stuff? This third party? Or Pinax provided?
Yeah, I think it's actually only the account thing is the one that's provided.
Okay. Well, we do use admin status.
Yeah, we do use these other admin URLs that I left on there. So, yeah, those are not the Pinax provided ones. Those are like Django ones built in. Except for status, which, I made myself. So.
Okay. And then serve media.
Right, so...
Oh, this is for all the photos and stuff, yeah?
For, like, static files, yeah.
Right.
Like, your development server serves media by default. Which is not generally recommended in production. You usually have like Apache serve it up directly. So this is just if your server is going to serve up the media, like the WSGI process that we use in production.
Right.
If that's going to serve media directly, then it would use this. Your development server would use this, but in the case of our production server,
it's Apache that's serving these.
It's Apache that's serving, so it's not actually doing this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've been through this.
Yeah.
I think we're good for today.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.